First up, though, the latest at this hour. What we know at the end of a very busy day, including President Obama ordering review of airport security and terror watch lists. And this, pictures of the actual device ripped, burning off the would-be bomber on Christmas Day. You're looking at the underwear with about 80 grams of powdered explosive sewn into it. That's about 3 ounces of PETN, which is just a shy of a third more than Richard Reed had inside his shoe. The alleged shoe bomber, remember him? Well, as for this suspect, Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab, a 23-year-old Nigerian, he was claimed today by the group Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. The group saying he is one of theirs and boasting about the failed attack, in fact, promising even worse. The group released a statement which reads, in part, "Be prepared to suffer because the killing is coming. And we prepared you men who love death just as you love life. And by God's permission, we will come to you with more things that you have never seen before, because as you kill, you will be killed. And tomorrow is coming soon." As you kill, those words, some believe, are a direct reference to recent airstrikes on Al-Qaeda targets in Yemen, the latest of which happened on the 24th. And that date, along with the 17th, the day which also saw airstrikes, may be significant to Al-Qaeda, but perhaps even more significant, especially to folks in this country, with regard to stopping the would-be bomber, is this date, November 19th. That is when the suspect's own father walked into the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria and, in so many words, ratted his son out. It seems that would be a giant red flag warning, but it wasn't the only one. Randy Kay keeping them honest tonight.
How was a guy with explosives allegedly sewn into his underwear able to board a U.S. airliner in Amsterdam bound for Detroit? Not just anyone, but Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab, someone the U.S. had been warned about by his own father, someone whose name was in a database of more than 500,000 people suspected of terrorist sympathies. Keeping them honest, I asked Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano why he was allowed on the flight 8 years after 9/11.
We're ascertaining why it was that he was not flagged in a more specific way when he purchased his ticket.
Christmas Eve, the day after his 23rd birthday, officials say Abdulmutallab boarded a KLM jet at Lagos Airport in Nigeria, bound for Amsterdam. Airport authorities say he went through, quote, routine screening. Once in Amsterdam, he boarded Northwest Flight 253 for Detroit, allegedly armed with enough of the explosive PET in the airplane. These photographs show how the explosive was sewn into his underwear.
Abdulmutallab had been issued a 2-year multi-entry U.S. visa in June 2008. But just today, senior administration officials confirmed his father personally visited the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria on November 19th, warning his son may be under the influence of religious extremists in Yemen and may be looking for jihad. The Yemen Embassy in Washington confirms Abdulmutallab was in Yemen between August and December. The day after the father's warning, November 20th, officials say the U.S. Embassy alerted the State Department.
The result? Abdulmutallab's name was added to the huge database of possible terrorist threats. But nothing was done that would bar him from entering the U.S. And unlike the no-fly list, the watch list Abdulmutallab was on did not require a secondary airport screening.
Why wasn't that visa revoked once he had been tagged in the system?
I've asked the same question, and we all want to know the answer to that question.
Administration officials say the father's warning was noted in the suspect's visa file, so a renewal application would trigger an in-depth review.
CNN has also learned Abdulmutallab was placed on a UK watch list back in 2008 and denied a student visa. The British government said Abdulmutallab applied to study at a school in London that did not exist. It's unclear if the U.S. was notified.
Who is Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab? He's a Muslim and Nigerian national who grew up wealthy. His father, until recently, was chairman of the First Bank of Nigeria. He studied engineering at a college in London. Before that, he attended an elite boarding school in West Africa with this young man, a former classmate and Christian, who says he once asked Abdulmutallab about the negative portrayal of Muslims on TV.
He said, no. If you ever see me come to school with a, with a bomb or something, nah, it's always peace.
But a former teacher told CNN Abdulmutallab showed sympathy for extremist groups like the Taliban. Weeks ago, the suspect, according to his family, dropped out of sight. In a statement, the family said it was, quote, out of character for him to disappear, that he had never done anything to raise concern. Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
Now, the Yemen connection and some of the other angles to this story. Digging deeper tonight with Homeland Security correspondent Jeanne Meserve, who's been working her sources around the clock since Friday. Also with us, national security analyst Peter Bergen. He's the author of The Oral History, the Osama bin Laden I Know, and is also one of the only Westerners to ever meet Osama bin Laden. Also joining us tonight, Ben Vinsky, who's CEO of Intel Senator, which monitors, among other things, communications between radical Islamist groups. Good to have all of you with us tonight. Peter, I want to start with you. We're learning more about this apparently failed attack last August from a member of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula against a Saudi prince, which used pretty much the same technology. Did that lay the groundwork, perhaps, for this, what appears to be a failed planned attack on Christmas Day?
It did. Back in October, I reported for CNN the fact that the explosive used in the failed suicide attempt by this suicide attacker on the screen that we see, aimed at the powerful Deputy Minister of the Interior, was PETN. PETN is used very rarely in terrorist attacks. The only other time that I'm aware of is the Richard Reed so-called shoe bomb attack. This was very much a dry run for the Detroit attack, it looks like. This guy on the screen got through metal detectors on the way to try and kill the Prince Nayef. He also had the PETN sewn into his underwear. He managed to kill himself, but not Prince Nayef. But clearly, al-Qaeda in Yemen, which had directed this assassination attempt, basically saw, well, this works. We can get through metal detectors. This can work at airports. We know that PETN has been discovered in Yemen at one of these al-Qaeda training camps just in the last couple of weeks or so, Erica. So, I mean, you put all that together. Clearly, they learned from this assassination attempt. They have a bomb maker who can do this. Hopefully, he may have been killed in some of these attacks, but there is a master bomb maker out there somewhere who has done both of these terrorist attempts.
And Ben, in its statement which it released today, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula wrote, and I'm quoting here, "The martyrdom brother was able to reach his objective with the grace of God, but due to a technical fault, the full explosion didn't take place." Clearly, though, it sounds just from reading the statement that they released that they're still pretty happy with the results. Is this a success in this group's eyes?
Well, it is, because we have to remember here we're talking about a regional arm of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, as opposed to core al-Qaeda. So if it was core al-Qaeda, this would be seen as a failure. It wasn't as successful as 9/11, something like that. But for a regional arm that's never struck in the U.S. before, to be able to demonstrate that they have the capability to reach out and attack within the United States, and albeit but for a small technical glitch, it would have succeeded. So for them, that is something that they'll herald and possibly seek to carry on again.
And Jeanne, as you're speaking to your sources, I imagine too this changes some of the things in some of the groups that are on their radar, because as Ben just mentioned, this is the first time that this regional group is reaching out to U.S. or Western interests.
Yeah, it definitely is something that's of concern to them, but I have to say that the counterterrorism officials I've spoken to said they're very much still in the investigative mode and trying to figure out exactly how involved this group was with this attempted attack. They think there's good reason to believe they were involved, but they're saying, what was it? I mean, did they actually supply a bomb, or was it something more like a pat on the back or a handshake? We just don't know. They don't just know as yet. They're still looking into that.
And we're going to continue looking and digging deeper into this with all three of you. Jeanne, Peter, Ben, stay with us as we talk more after the break.